Welcome to My IELTS Classroom, the podcast where two ex-examiners talk all things IELTS. I'm Shelley Cornick.
And I'm Nick Lone.
And today we will be talking about IELTS Cambridge Book 16. What are the IELTS Cambridge books? Why do we think they are the best way that you can prepare? And how would Nick and I tackle the new essay questions in Book 16? Hello, Nick.
Hello. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Well, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't he not sound like a relaxed person? Are you feeling relaxed after your time off?
I'm feeling so relaxed. I'm almost horizontal.
That makes me really happy. So, today, Nick, we are going to be looking at Cambridge Book 16. Before we start the lesson, there's a couple of things that I want to say. First of all, what are those books, Nick?
They're previous exams, aren't they? Previous IELTS exams.
They are genuine previous exam papers. And these are books which are published by Cambridge so that you, the test taker, can understand exactly what will happen on your test day.
Yep.
Now, they charge for these books, right? So they are things that you should purchase. However, you know, Cambridge and the British Council and IDP do provide one or two practice tests on their website.
They do, yeah.
So, you know, you don't have to buy these books. But if you're looking, you know, to really have a decent amount of practice before your test day, you might want to consider buying one or two. In terms of the books, there is now 16 of them. I would say the books you want to focus on, you know, if you're coming today and you're going to ask me what are the best books for me to purchase, I would start with the highest number.
Yeah,
right. So
the most recent, right?
They are the most recent. Definitely, books 1 to 5, I would say, are no longer valid or should not really be used because think about it. God, I was trying to think about this. They must be at least
more than 10 years old.
I'd even say 20, Nick.
Wow.
I think in January I would have been teaching, God help me, for 20 years. And there were definitely some Cambridge books around then.
Wow.
So those books 1 to 5, yeah, they might look similar to the untrained eye, but the writing tasks, the type of reading in them, and the listening tasks in particular have completely changed. So from my perspective, maybe 5 is just about, if you're desperate, doable. But 1 to 4, I would definitely forget. And I would say, if anything, start at number 6. Yeah. But if you're starting your preparation, don't start with number 6. No. As Nick said, start with 16. And work backwards. I actually think there's a big change in the test since about book 12. The other thing that's important is in the books, now there are academic and general training versions.
Separate versions, yeah.
Separate versions. I think that started at book 12. From book 12 to 16, inside each book, there are 4 separate tests. If you get academic, there'll be 4 academic tests. If you get general, there'll be 4 general tests. Before that, books 1 to 11, because back then, most people who took IELTS were doing it because they wanted to study abroad. The focus was more on the academic. Yep. So you get 4 academic tests and then stuck at the end of the book. 2, right? 2 general tests at the end. 2 little general training tests. Interestingly, to be honest, because speaking and listening is the same for both tests, what was actually at the back of the test was just, 2 general training readings and 2 general training writing tests. Yep. So if you're a general training student, again, if you're going to spend money, it's a lot of money to spend, I think, for 2 tests at the back of the book. So you may just want to focus on books 12 to 16. All right. So, Nick, I only got this book just before the weekend. The first topic, well, I'm going to let you react to it, Nick, because I've reacted at home on my own. All right, are you ready?
Yeah.
In some countries, more and more people are becoming interested in finding out about the history of the house or building they live in.
Are they?
What are the reasons for this? How can people research this? First reactions, mate.
Absolutely horrible question.
Horrific, isn't it?
I thought it was going to say interested in finding out about their family heritage.
And I have heard that as a reported question, and that to me makes sense.
Yeah, that would be way more sensible, I would say, because I think that's true, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think there are clear reasons for it and clear ways to do it. Whereas this question, this is the first time I've ever heard anyone say that people are researching the house they live in.
If one of my friends said to me, I said, what have you been doing this weekend? I've just been finding out about the house I live in.
The new build that you bought in 2005, yeah?
Yeah. Why? I mean, horrible question, because I'm going to be honest. What are the reasons for this?
No idea.
No. I mean, and when I say no idea, yes, I'm going to come up with some ideas, but for 99% of IELTS questions, I don't have to actually think for at least my first idea.
Mm-hmm.
But I am genuinely sitting here now thinking I have no idea why somebody would want to research the house or the building that they live in. So I guess if this happens in the test, if you get a question where you are like, I have no idea, the best thing you can do is to start asking yourself questions to try and prompt some sort of answers, right? So I guess then people usually only do things because it benefits them, right?
Yep.
So why would we want to find out more information about, my house? How would that benefit me in some way? Okay, well, my first argument is that houses are expensive, right? We were speaking a couple of weeks ago, like it's a large investment of money.
The largest, maybe.
Probably the biggest thing you will ever buy in your life.
Mm-hmm.
But you may want to just have a look and check that there's nothing in that house's history which could affect
the market value, for example.
The market value. Now, I am personally not very superstitious.
Me neither.
But I do think you could research to make sure that like the house hadn't been connected to crime in some way. I'm thinking about murder or something. I don't know. No one's been killed in the house.
I think this would be a really good argument if the question was before they buy a house. I don't understand why you would do this if you already live there.
So maybe then the key to this question, if you think about it, it's one of our trend questions because it says more and more people. So I think we should focus on what has changed. Why are more people today researching the history of their house now than in the past? And the first thing I think of is that, in the past, people used to live in one place, didn't they, their whole life? So they probably knew the history of their house, right? It was either, just their parents or their grandparents who had lived there, or if it's a small community, you would have known the previous tenants. Whereas now, because people are moving to absolutely, not just new cities, but new countries, maybe people are sort of curious just to understand the history of the local area, to have a kind of, sense of connection to the place. And I also guess similarly, if we're living in new areas, I think sometimes people are just curious as to the history. Think of an English house. It may, if it's Victorian or Edwardian, it may have had people living there for a couple of 100 years. There's a possibility somebody was famous, not necessarily a murder, but just basically people are curious to understand what happened in the place they're living.
Now, we have a mutual friend who lives in St. Petersburg, who lives in the house or flat of a famous person.
That's true, yeah.
And this person uses that fact to boost his or her Instagram account.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
So, if you live in a flat where a famous person has lived, then there's a lot of potential there to make. I mean, obviously, he's not got a business; he's not making money. Yeah, but it's something that you could potentially.
Horrific! If you had this in your exam, I'm really sorry. The only maybe saving grace with this question is the next question, which again I find strange because to me, the second question, how can people research this? That's a general knowledge question.
Yeah, that's not really an IELTS question, is it?
Even IELTS direct questions are usually things which require you to use your own opinions, right? Like, what can children learn from playing sport? You can at least
isn't it? Yeah.
Guess what that is, but how do you research? I mean, how can people research it?
I guess they could go down to the local planning agency and get request some documents and stuff like that.
I would say the local council or government office who store all of the documents, particularly like, the history of the previous tenants. that sort of thing.
Look online. Previous tenants as well. Usually, I don't know in other countries, but in the UK, you can usually see any houses, the history of buyers and sellers and the price that it went for as well.
That's true. So you could look online, definitely. You may also be able to, I don't know, like look in newspapers, but I don't know how that would work. Like it's like local newspaper records to see if anything of interest happened in the house, for example. This one to me, I think you could probably come up with a couple of ways. Definitely a government office, definitely search online. But if you say search online, be specific. As Nick just said, you can find the previous owners, the cost, the property prices. Scale of 1 to 10 of difficult. I think that's probably up there.
It's a 10.
It's a 10. All right. So that was the first question. So if you've survived that and you still got the energy for exam 2, here we go. In their advertising, businesses nowadays usually emphasize that their products are new in some way. Why is this? Do you think it's a positive or negative development? Right. So before we start looking at this, Nick, usually I think you and I did a great job discussing this combination, this 2-part question of why something is...
And positive, negative development.
Positive, negative, which, again, we're seeing it here. This seems to be IELTS' new favourite combination of questions, right? They give a trend, they ask you why that trend exists, and if you think it's positive or negative. We spent a long time saying if you've got why and positive or negative, we would generally recommend that you say the reasons in the first paragraph why the trend is, and then we will say in the second paragraph that it's a negative development. Why is that what we recommend?
Because think of 4 positive reasons is extremely difficult without repeating yourself.
Yes, because the reasons for a trend are usually positive.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the example we gave, why do people study online? It's cheap, it's convenient, you can do it when you want, you can have a wider range. The reasons for that trend are positive. Yeah. So to then say it's positive means you're going to have 2 positive reasons and 2 positive arguments, which are different. You can't use the same ones in both paragraphs. That makes it very difficult. Whereas if you say, this is why this trend is happening, and you give a couple of positives, but then you say, but I think it's negative, you've got a whole pool of new ideas to work from, everything is great. This one I think is a bit different,
tricky,
though,
isn't it?
Because I think that the first question, why is this? That question is asking, why do businesses emphasize that their products are new? So that question why is asking us the logic that the businesses have.
Okay.
Do you think it's a positive or negative development, though? I don't think this question is really talking about is it good or bad for the businesses.
It's for society, isn't it?
It's for the consumer. So this, I think, is actually, although the questions is the same as always, I think this one, actually, you probably could say why and say it's positive, because I think you're sort of, the whys are for why do businesses do this, and the positives are for why is it positive for society or in general. So it's kind of 2 different things.
Strands of,
Yes. So let's start with the why then. All right. We've got a business. Why are we going to emphasize that our products are new in some way?
To make people buy them.
Yeah, but what is it about being new that makes people buy something?
People want new things.
Yeah, I think they do. I think the word new
has a certain appeal, doesn't it?
Has an appeal because I think new, particularly today, I think people think new products are best because they think new means, I don't know, latest technology, right?
Yeah, latest, yeah.
So I think it's this idea of like new means you're going to get the absolute most, the best, yeah. So whether or not, if that's, particularly if that's some sort of technical gadget, right?
For
so
sure.
It's going to have
phones,
the best
TVs,
best software,
computers,
the best camera, the fastest. So I think that there is some connotation between new and any sort of superlative, right? Biggest, fastest, best. Okay, I don't know. Can you think of anything apart from that? Why they would say it was new, apart from the fact that it's the best? I don't think I can.
I think it could be a marketing tool.
Oh, so it gives them like something, gives them a way of actually drawing attention to their product.
So even if like, clever. even if the like the most of the product is not new, if they have one tiny thing in it that's new, they can say, well, it's new because it's not the same as the previous one.
And it gives you a reason to actually market and advertising. Whereas maybe like trying to advertise the same thing which has never changed.
Yeah.
That's really true, Nick. And that's why they sometimes just change the colour of something, isn't it? Or something which doesn't affect the function, but it just gives you sort of a reason to tell people, hey, it's different.
It's new, it's different, yeah.
It's different, maybe. Oh, I think that's great, mate. So I think Nick's hit on a whole jackpot area because that's a different argument. But if you were just stuck thinking, I don't know, all I know is that people think new things are better. If you ever get stuck like that, try and separate maybe the better into two parts. So, for example, it might be, you know, people think that new things are made from better materials. So you could focus on the materials, right? So like the latest, I don't know, if it's clothes, like the most comfortable, breathable kind of materials, or the new fashion, for example. And then you can maybe then also focus on, you know, the technology. So it's got the newest software, the most up to date. It won't go out of date as quickly or won't be replaced. You could divide new is better into two, but try and come up with two things. But I think what you said is good, because I think, Nick, is that having anything new gives advertisers an excuse to contact people
and say, hey,
and show them. Yeah. So then, is this positive or negative? I'm going to say it's negative. Because I think what happens is if we keep getting told that everything is new all the time, new, updated, it just means that people feel like their current products are outdated when they're not.
Yeah.
So essentially that just leads to people buying new products, literally, not because they're better, but because they're being told.
Yeah.
That
so
they're
buying
different.
more stuff that they don't need, basically.
It's the classic IELTS overconsumption, right? Like people, you know, think that there's something wrong with the old one, which probably there isn't. So they feel like they're going to have to, you know, update what they've got more often. Overconsumption. Once you're on this path, you're automatically led to the environment, right? So like, you know, we're throwing too much stuff away. Things get left in landfill. Using too much raw materials to create these products. That's the direction that I would go.
Yep, me too, for sure.
And I can't actually think of anything that's positive. I mean, it's positive for the people who are selling.
Yeah, big profits.
But I can't really think of anything that's positive.
For people in society.
Don't know. But I think, compared to the first one, not easy, but easier.
It's a much more IELTS-y question, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's something that you can definitely be prepared for and have a strategy for answering.
I would say advertising, if you're an academic student, that topic comes up again and again and again. I mean, look, Book 15's got an advertising question, Book 10's got one, I think Book 12's got one. You've got to know a bit about advertising if you're going to be sitting the test. Now, the third question, I don't know, I'm going to read it to you. You tell me what you think. Many manufactured food and drink products contain high levels of sugar, which causes many health problems. Sugary products should be made more expensive to encourage people to consume less sugar. Do you agree or disagree?
Okay.
First thoughts.
It sounds like a good IELTS question. Good topic.
It sounds like a classic IELTS question, right? I kind of like this question because I think what they've done is they've, you know, I think in the past we had a lot of questions about people are fat. Why are people fat? Why is there obesity? How can we solve it, right? So it was a lot of problem solution questions.
Yeah.
And as we know, we've had a lovely episode about overgeneral solutions. People always give the same solutions, which are public awareness. People should understand. Everybody knows that sugar is bad for them, right? Or HR departments or somebody's got to make it easier for people to exercise, stuff like that, right? So what I like about this is they've given us one very specific solution, and now they're asking us to evaluate
the solution.
That solution.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different to usual. I think it's good.
Yeah.
Because it's going to force the students to be specific.
Yeah.
So my first argument, so I'm going to disagree, and I don't think we should increase the cost. In my first paragraph, I guess, you know, if I think about health trends and making things more expensive, what's the first thing that you think of? It's not sugar. What do we actually
alcohol,
charge?
cigarettes.
It's alcohol and cigarettes. So my first argument would be that, sadly, I don't think cost actually has an effect on consumption levels because, you know, historically, we've already charged more for cigarettes and people just keep paying.
Yeah, people
It's
will
the same
pay
for alcohol.
And alcohol.
Yeah.
And it just means, like, if it's a poor family, for example, it's less money for the kids.
So I will talk about that in the first paragraph, I think, about how I don't actually think it would have a massive effect. My idea for the second paragraph would be that it's not just sugar that makes people fat. There's food which is high in fat. So and salt, for example, like McDonald's is not selling sugary products, right? But that type of fast food is contributing. So unless we taxed all types of unhealthy food at the same rate, or we increase the price of all of them, the problem is probably just going to move, right? So you probably just see people will start buying other types of bad food.
Rather than sugary stuff. Yeah. Would you add balance to those paragraphs?
Yeah, definitely. I think in the first paragraph, say, although there will be some people who will think twice about buying bars of chocolate or ice cream if it's more expensive, the majority of people won't.
The number would be.
And also, these are not really that expensive products, are they? So, if it's 50p or if it's 70p, it's still relatively affordable. All right, so I think we're getting sort of easier and easier, right? The first one was definitely the most difficult. Yeah. Advertising was still pretty tricky. I think this sugary one's all right.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's a good one.
It's not bad. It's if you're walking into the IELTS exam without some arguments about obesity, you're basically walking in naked. You don't want to be doing that, right?
It's a big topic. So, you need to know that topic.
Yeah. So then let's have a look at this last one. Ready? In the future, all cars, buses and trucks will be driverless. The only people travelling inside these vehicles will be passengers. Do you think the advantages of driverless vehicles outweigh the disadvantages? Now, why did you say all there? Were you shocked at the question?
I didn't expect it to be an advantages, disadvantages question.
I thought it was going to be, do you agree or disagree?
Me too.
Yeah. Now, I know about you, Nick, but when I looked at this question for this morning, I kind of thought advantages I can probably come up with. Disadvantages
for me are much easier to come up with.
Okay, good. Okay, go on. 50, what have you got? What have you got for disadvantages then?
Disadvantages, first of all, is that it destroys hundreds and thousands of jobs. And
so, like all of those trucks and bus drivers, whole industry,
bus drivers, taxi drivers, everybody, delivery drivers.
So, yes, loss of jobs, definitely. What else would be negative about these driverless vehicles?
I would say it's more dangerous.
Do you mean in terms of like vehicle collisions? I also thought about safety because it says cars, buses and trucks. I thought, in terms of cars and trucks, you can talk about collisions. I also thought that for buses, having a bus with no human driving it, particularly like late night buses, maybe that would also sort of like make them less safe in terms of, like women travelling on their own late at night, not having somebody there to actually see what's happening on the bus. That feels more dangerous to me.
It does, yeah. Somebody who can just stop it and call the police or whatever.
Definitely. So, okay, they're exactly the negatives that I had. So can you think of any positives?
People have more time to do what they want.
Particularly for cars, you don't have to actually, you can use that driving time. You're now a passenger.
Yeah, you sort of frees up a bit of time, doesn't it, to do what like if you commute into work, check emails, whatever. That's
really true. I thought this is a sad one, but because we don't have to pay people anymore, these services should probably become cheaper.
Yes, I didn't think of that one. That's a good one, yeah.
And also because humans, a driver can only drive a certain amount of time, particularly for trucks. They could just be going 24 hours, couldn't they?
Yep.
So they'd be sort of more efficient, I guess, in terms of overnight buses or trucks or stuff like that.
Here's another one. Kids could be more independent.
Oh, Nick, that's amazing. Soccer mums don't have to come to the game anymore. They can just stick their kids on the bus. That's a great one.
Well, not stick them on the bus because they could take the bus now, but they could stick them in a driverless car and just,
you could have your own car.
The kids wouldn't be able to control it. It'd just be like putting them in a taxi, wouldn't it?
Oh, I think you've just... Yeah, that's amazing. I'm just imagining my sister putting she'd have 3 little cars, one for each kid. They can all just go off to a different activity every afternoon. In terms of the position, it doesn't matter if you think there are more advantages or more disadvantages, right? You're still going to have to come up with the same number. It will just change slightly, what you write in your introduction, what you have for the topic sentences, the order that you present the information, right? If you think that there's more advantages, start with the disadvantages and then the advantages. vice versa if you've got the other opinion. Maybe not as tricky as I thought. I thought this was the second most difficult question. Maybe the advertising's more difficult than this.
I think it just depends what, the student's interested in and what the advertising. I mean, that's been a staple of IELTS, hasn't it, for a long time?
Yeah,
whereas driverless vehicles is a fairly... You won't find that in IELTS book 9 or 10, for example.
No, because they'd still be like, in 2060, there may... Like, that would still be distant future in book 10,
and that's another thing, actually, that we didn't mention. The older books, another reason why you should start from the new books is because a lot of the stuff in the older books probably isn't that relevant anymore, is it?
No, some of the topics.
The reading materials as well probably are a little bit out of date now.
They could be, yeah, they could be. I mean, they tend to be neutral, but I think you're right that some of the topics in the older books have maybe been retired because they've been done so often. And now we've got more things like researching the history of your house. Okay, so they are the 4 academic questions from Cambridge Book 16. It's always useful for you to listen how Nick and I go through these questions. And to also know that sometimes we struggle.
Yeah.
And that first question
that was a tough one.
Is a struggle. Yeah. So that's it for this week. Next week, we're going to talk about what it takes to get Band 8.
Ooh.
So if you're looking for a CLB 10 or higher, come back then. My IELTS Classroom podcast is a production of My IELTS Classroom Limited. Nick and I do not represent IELTS, and everything you heard in this episode is our own personal opinion. You can find the show notes and transcript for this episode on our blog. That's www.blog.myieltsclassroom.com. And if you're looking for our video courses, speaking lessons and marking service, you can find them at www.myieltsclassroom.com. If you have a question or query or just want to chat, you can email Nick and I at hello@myieltsclassroom.com. Our theme music is by Heartbeat and our artwork is produced by David Brown. Have a great week, study hard, and remember,
this is My IELTS Classroom.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you found the content useful, please click like to help the channel, and don't forget to subscribe for new lessons every Friday. Plus, you can find more expert content at www.myieltsclassroom.com.